Israelin konflikti. Vuosi sitten, 7. lokakuuta 2023, Hamas hyökkäsi yllättäen Israeliin. Hyökkäyksessä kuoli noin 1200 ihmistä ja panttivangeiksi jäi 250 israelilaista. Hamasin tarkoituksena oli nostaa esille maailmalla vaiettu lähes 100-vuotias Palestiinan ihmisoikeuskysymys sekä saada panttivankien avulla vapautettua palestiinalaisia, joita on pidetty vankeina israelilaisissa vankiloissa jopa kymmeniä vuosia. Koko kansainvälinen lehdistö välitti vahvistamattomina Israelin kertomukset Hamasin barbaarisista teoista hyökkäyksessä. Vauvojen päiden mestaamista, 40 nuoren pojan polttamista elävältä sekä vanhusten ja lasten raiskaamisia ja muita rankkoja kertomuksia. Ylen A-studiossa 7.10.2024.
Entä se propagandapuoli?
Tämähän koko konflikti on ollut valtava disinformaatio, propagandakampanja. Meidän on niin kuin hyvin vaikea tietää lopulta, että miten näitä panttivankeja kohdellaan erillisissä tapauksissa. Ja se, kenellä se voimakkain disinformaatiovalta tässä kuitenkin on ollut Israel. Kyllähän siellä on mennyt aikamoista juttua läpi myös kansainvälisessä mediassa, lähtien näistä 7. lokakuuta miekalla päästä poikkaistuista vauvoista, joita presidentti Bidenia myöten kerrottiin, joita sitten ei pystytty vahvistamaan, jotka ei ole totta. Tässä on tämmöinen valtava propagandakampanja tietenkin käynnissä.
Vaikea näitä on tietysti varmentaa yksityiskohtia kummankaan osapuolen väitteitä.
Remember the stories of beheaded Israeli babies?
Babies, their heads cut off.
Beheading children.
There's this outrage effect when you have headline after headline that says something like Hamas beheads 40 babies. Once you try to retract that information, the disinformation has already spread, even though that particular case has been debunked. At the same time, we have seen video footage of many headless Palestinian children, and yet that gets no coverage.
Yhteys Ukrainan sodan alun kertomuksiin lapsia ja vanhuksia raiskaavista venäläisistä on käsin kosketeltavaa. Tällaisella propagandalla vaikutetaan suoraan ihmisten tunteisiin ja yleiseen mielipiteeseen konfliktien osapuolista. Kyse on lopulta siitä, että kenen propagandaa mikäkin taho päättää uskoa. Esimerkiksi Ukrainan kohdalla länsimainen media päätti ottaa Ukrainan ja Yhdysvaltojen propagandan uskomuslistalleen. Samoin näyttää olevan tilanne Israelin kohdalla, jonka liittolainen Yhdysvallat jälleen on.
There's been a lot of debate about how Western media has covered Israel's war on Gaza. And the question is whether their reporting is presenting a balanced picture or is there an intentional tilt?
You realize that there is a pattern in how actions by the West, especially by the United States and Israel, is justified through the media. It affects the way the public understands the situation on the ground, and it affects their ability to form opinions on it that are honest. Palestinians are dehumanized because they are nameless. They don't have stories. But when there are victims on the Israeli side, you see profiles that talk about these people because they are in fact people. You'll see things like in recent headlines about Israeli soldiers throwing Palestinians off of a roof in the West Bank. The headlines that you see say things like apparent lifeless bodies. That's not how it would be described if the victims were Israeli. That's the other way that the headline reads it. Israel is investigating itself. And this also has become normalized, not only within the US political discourse, but the media has normalized it, as if it is normal for the criminal to investigate itself.
We have asked the Israeli authorities to investigate this incident.
We have urged a swift, thorough, and transparent investigation.
And they have told us they are conducting a full criminal investigation.
And so the media's role is complicit with that of the state in just repeating certain PR and propaganda that justifies Israel's actions, even as far as genocide in Gaza. History records eventually the truth in long term.
Mitään näistä Israelin kertomuksista ei kuitenkaan ole vieläkään vahvistettu. Ikävä kyllä näin järkyttävät tarinat jäävät kuitenkin ihmisten mieliin. Hyvänä esimerkkinä tästä on Piers Morgan ja hänen keskustelunsa iranilaisen professorin Marandin kanssa 18.4.2024.
How would you categorize what happened on October the 7th? Was that a terrorist attack?
No, it was a retaliation of a people who were imprisoned and who were starved and who were regularly battered, and people who were imprisoned who belonged...
Just to be clear, you think that the slaughter of 1,200 people, the raping, the maiming, the incinerating, the mass murder that went on that day by a group whose own spokesman, the Hamas spokesman, said days after that, on television, on camera, that Hamas was wedded to committing the same act again and again and again, as often as it could, which actually is the purest personification of the genocide that you're talking about. You don't condemn that.
You're being dishonest. There is no evidence.
No, I'm not.
There's no evidence of rape, and I ask your viewers to
absolute
look
nonsense.
At, yes,
nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense that there's systematic rape, and if you are being dishonest intentionally, you are helping the Israeli regime continue its genocide by justifying it through dishonesty. So that's up to you to decide. There's no evidence of systematic rape, and just like the beheadings,
there has been clear reported evidence of rape and sexual abuse against Israeli women. Clear, demonstrable evidence.
I refer you and your audience to the good work carried out by people at the Gray Zone, at the Electronic Intifada, based in the United States. Many of them are people of they're excellent reporters, and you should invite them on your show to talk about these allegations.
I've talked to top reporters who've covered this.
Well, I'm
also interested, Professor, that you only want to deny that there was rape. You don't want to deny the incineration or the beheading or the mass murder of Holocaust survivors, the kidnapping of several hundred people, including babies. I mean, do you condemn any of that, or do you think all of that is justified?
Look, yes, you're trying to play with words, and that's fine, as long as you're not trying to you're playing because there is no evidence of beheadings. You're just taking the dishonest Israeli regime's account, which they have no evidence, and people have written articles
there
about
was
this.
Demonstrable, proven evidence that people were beheaded. Provable evidence. And
so
more than that, we know from Hamas's own video coverage of what they were doing in real time that they proudly broadcast to the world. They didn't try and hide this. I'm just curious why you, who is so incensed by what you see as Israeli genocide, why you would not be equally incensed by genocidal behavior from Hamas that day.
No, you're not being honest. And where did they broadcast this footage of beheadings, Hamas, to the world? Can you put it right now where you have?
I didn't say they broadcast the beheadings. There was evidence found of people who'd been beheaded. That was not broadcast. But what was broadcast was the one. I didn't say there was footage of the beheading. I said there was evidence found that people had been beheaded. Right. But I would also say to you that what was broadcast by Hamas of Hamas slaughtering people and kidnapping people, I'm proudly boasting about it, something you seem to be smirking about. I'm just curious what you feel.
I'm smirking at you.
Why?
Because you are clearly being dishonest. If there were people, innocent people, anywhere, whether in Palestine or elsewhere, who were killed by a soldier, by anyone, that is, of course, unacceptable. But these claims of systematic rape, these are dishonest claims. People have done hard work to prove that there is no evidence for these systematic rapes and beheadings, and these were used as propaganda to justify the beginning of this Holocaust in Gaza. And those who continue...
Israel katsoi oikeudekseen vastata Hamasin hyökkäykseen moninkertaisella voimalla. Vuoden sotimisen jälkeen 60% Gazan rakennuksista, 84% terveyskeskuksista sekä 92% teistä on tuhoutuneet. Palestiinalaisia on kuollut jo yli 40 000, joista suurin osa on naisia ja lapsia. Kaiken lisäksi 90% koko Gazan väestöstä, eli noin 2 miljoonaa ihmistä, elävät raunioiden keskellä, koska eivät pääse suljetulta Gazan alueelta pois. Humanitaarinen kriisi on valtava. Israelin suhteettoman suuret toimet Gazaa kohtaan ovat saaneet maailmalla paljon kritiikkiä. Yhdysvallat ovat toistuvasti käyttänyt veto-oikeuttaan YK:ssa, muun muassa estääkseen tulitauon syntymisen tai humanitaarisen avun antamisen. Yhdysvallat esiintyy julkisuudessa maltillisena Israelin toppuuttelijana, vaikkakin seuraava klippi paljastaa Yhdysvaltojen todellisen agendan taustalla.
That has led to over 44% of all buildings in Rafah being either destroyed or damaged according to satellite photos, which is to say that there might not have been a major operation in Rafah, but there was cumulative attacks that led to a good deal of destruction. So how does this precedent of Rafah portend for Lebanon?
So every conflict is different, but if you look at what we continue to engage with Israel about when it comes to Lebanon is ensuring that they have the ability to attack terrorist targets, terrorist infrastructure, a terrorist organization, but ultimately we want to see a diplomatic resolution.
Well, was that the case with Rafah, for instance, not just in Rafah, but...
We've never wanted to see a diplomatic resolution with Hamas.
Well, Okay. Well, what about the ceasefire?
We wanted to see a ceasefire, but we have always been committed to the destruction of Hamas. We did want to see a ceasefire, but we have always made clear that we wanted to see a different authority moving forward in governance of Gaza.
Okay, but so for instance, other UN satellite image shows that 66% of Gaza structures have been damaged. And you earlier today said that the U.S. supports the targeting of terrorist infrastructure, not civilian infrastructure. Does the U.S. believe 66% of Gaza's buildings are terrorist infrastructure?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Which is why we have been engaged to try to reach a ceasefire to end that conflict, which is why we have been pushing for a ceasefire to months. And I wish that Hamas would come to the table and work with us on a ceasefire. As you heard me saying earlier, Hamas has been absent for weeks, won't even respond to the mediators putting forward ideas asking whether they would agree to a ceasefire or not. Look, you can talk about Israel and the culpability that Israel has and the tough decisions that Israel needs to make. And it's absolutely true that Israel needs to make tough decisions to get to a ceasefire. But the way out of this conflict is a ceasefire. And it is Hamas that is missing in action right now that won't come to the table to talk about one.
Ei ole ihme, että Hamasiin on vaikea saada yhteyttä, kun Israel pyrkii systemaattisesti murhaamaan kaikki Hamasin johtajat. On myös varmasti mielenkiintoista neuvotella tulitauosta USAn kanssa, jonka pyrkimyksenä on Hamasin täysi tuhoaminen. Mutta oliko Hamasin yllätyshyökkäys Israeliin sittenkään yllätys? Useat lähteet paljastavat, että Israelin tiedustelupalvelu Mossad tiesi Hamasin aikeista hyökätä Israeliin jo jopa vuosi ennen hyökkäystä. Miksi siis Mossad ja Israel antaisi tällaisen hyökkäyksen tapahtua? Israelilainen lehti Haaretz antaa tähän mielenkiintoisen näkökulman. Netanyahu ja Hamas ovat kumppaneita, julisti israelilainen Haaretz-lehti lyhyessä historian katsauksessaan lokakuussa 2023. Artikkelissa käsitellään tapoja, joilla Netanyahu on tukenut Hamasin aseellista ryhmää yli 16-vuotisen Israelin pääministerikautensa aikana. Israel valvoi tiukasti, kuka Gazaan sai tulla ja mitä sinne sai toimittaa. Netanyahu salli Iranin ja Katarin yli 30 miljoonan dollarin kuukausittaiset rahatoimitukset vuosien ajan Hamasille, vaikka se tiesi, että merkittävä osa varoista meni Hamasin aseelliseen varustamiseen. Vanha sanonta kuuluu, pidä ystävät lähellä ja viholliset lähempänä. Netanyahu on se, joka muutti Hamasin vähävaraisesta terrorijärjestöstä puolivaltiolliseksi elimeksi, Haaretz-lehti totesi. Väitetysti, mutta useiden lähteiden tukemana, Netanyahu sanoi tapaamisessa Likud-puolueensa jäsenten kanssa vuonna 2019 seuraavaa. Jokaisen, joka haluaa estää Palestiinan valtion perustamisen, on tuettava Hamasin tukemista ja rahan siirtämistä Hamasille. Tämä on osa strategiaamme, jolla eristämme Gazan palestiinalaiset länsirannan palestiinalaisista. Salliko siis Netanyahu Hamasin aseistamisen ja sitten hyökkäyksen Israeliin vai saadakseen moraalisen oikeutuksen tuhota Hamas ja koko Gazan alue kokonaan?